Welcome back to Hollywood. I'm Roger Simon. This is Lionel
Chetwynd, yes.
Will you be wearing the LA Kings shirt for the next 43 years?
Roger, I should live so long.
Okay, good. All right, Rotten Tomatoes in a few minutes. But first, Lionel and I will devote today's Hollywood to discuss what may prove to be yet another damaging blow to the credibility of CBS News. Perhaps as damaging as Dan Rather's coverage of George W. Bush's National Guard service, which aired on 60 Minutes in 2004 and relied on forged documents as evidence. That incident led to Rather being fired and, ironically, to the founding of PJ Media, then Pajamas Media, and PJ TV. Then, as now, 60 Minutes has aired a controversial story whose veracity is proven suspect, and the organization finds themselves in hot water again. On April 22nd, 60 Minutes broadcast a story, this one by Bob Simon, blaming Israel for the declining population of Christian Arabs in the Holy Land. It was the subject of protests by CBS shareholders who were also board members of the Committee for Accuracy in Middle East Reporting, CAMERA, at CBS's shareholder meeting on May 24th. What were they protesting?
They were protesting a piece on 60 Minutes that went beyond opinion, that went beyond reportage into absorbing and propagating pure Arab propaganda, Islamist propaganda. It was a story of the diminishing of the Arab population, the Christian population in what they call the occupied West Bank. In fact, it is not the Bethlehem, specifically Bethlehem. Bethlehem is not in the occupied West Bank. Israel withdrew from Bethlehem, and interestingly enough, at the time they withdrew, there was graffiti on some of the Bethlehem walls that said, "Today the Saturday people, tomorrow the Sunday people." At the time, I think the Christian population...
Graffiti from Islamists.
From Islamists, yes. Right. At the time, I believe the Christian population was 40% of Bethlehem. It was under the stewardship of the Palestinian Authority that is diminished to under 3%, a period that also included the desecration of the church and the nativity. So that was not true.
So basically, one thing that I think we should make clear at the beginning, what caused the diminishment of the Christian population in Bethlehem, Nazareth, and Jerusalem was not fear of the Israelis, it was fear of the Islamists, which is totally different.
Well, I think not, because I believe there was an increase in the Christian population under the so-called Israeli occupation.
Yes, originally.
The diminishment came under the control of the PA and the wars with Fatah and so on. But more interestingly, to me, is the prelate that they interview made the following very curious statement that undermines the entire program. And well, watch this.
The only thing that Palestine was able to export so successfully was Christianity. Christianity has actually on the back a stamp saying "Made in Palestine."
Now, what's interesting about that is that that prelate knows as well as you and I that the word Palestine as a geographic description didn't come until at least 3 generations after Christ's crucifixion, came in the 70s AD, was imposed by Hadrian as an insult to the Jewish people and to Judea, which would then from henceforth be called Philistinia, because someone told him that the Jews had beaten Goliath, who was a Philistine. By the time of the introduction of that as a phrase, Christianity had already spread. So it was never made in Palestine. It was made in Judea by Jews. They were Jews. They called themselves Christian Jews. Well, and read Acts up to chapter 16 and you understand that. Now, why would he say that? Because he knows it's not true. Well, I thought he's living under Islamic control. And no doubt you got to be circumspect when you do that about what you say. But surely he could have got around it without just embracing their untrue, false narrative. And I thought about, in Hanoi Hilton, when they interviewed the POWs, they would blink out SOS. It was their way of saying to the world, don't believe this, it's not true. I genuinely believe that he told that untruth, clear untruth, in the belief that CBS had fact checkers. They would discover, of course, this is entirely false, and they would begin to understand that there was duress.
Right. Well, first of all, whether CBS has fact checkers or not is almost irrelevant because they have a narrative. And the narrative overwhelms any fact checking. And it's extraordinary who's behind this narrative. Les Moonves, the head of CBS, a Jew who is also a blood relative of Ben Gurion, yes, the founder of Israel. I mean, it's extraordinary. I mean, and also the level of lies in this particular show went from the macro, the one you just described, to the micro. They would say things like Bethlehem, which is secure, they're surrounded by an Israeli security wall, which of course is not. Only one side, one smaller side of it. The rest of it is wide open.
Which, by the way, only came along after the Israeli occupation to protect them from what happened after they would do. Because the reward for the withdrawal was the Intifada, the so-called Intifada. Yeah. Is Bob Simon a rogue reporter being protected by his program? So. Well, is it a rogue program? Is the program such an important franchise?
Yeah, no, we trace it back to, if you go back to the Dan Rather episode, we started PJ Media, and you watch through all of 60 Minutes, you find a certain kind of cultural and political bias.
Ted Koppel at Nightline once said to Jimmy Carter, talking about the Iranian uprising, he said, well, I don't think anything good came from it, Mr. Carter. And he said, well, you got a show, Ted, because Nightline came out of that. And I was just thinking, well, that's one good thing that came out of Dan Rather is we got PJ.
All right, let's start looking at the tough question.
But the question is, Viacom, who are protecting big business markets in the Middle East? Is it CBS News? Is it CBS Entertainment?
It's all of the above. But here's the tough question. The tough question is this. Yeah. Why are Jewish people doing this to each other? Why are they lying about themselves?
Why do they deny the truth? Yeah, why are they lying about themselves? Because Bob Simon is, I believe, Jewish. In fact, doesn't he live in and have a...
I believe, I'm not don't know for sure, but I haven't done the fact checking on this one. But I was told...
Well, we're as good as CBS News.
I was told by someone in a position to know that he once had a house in Herzliya in the fancy neighborhoods of Israel.
Look, I think there was a problem with American Jewry who believed that if Israel would go away, being Jewish would just be another kind of Protestant. In other words, the embarrassment, Jews would blend in completely, which is, I guess, what most of them want, expressing their religious duty through being left-wing Democrats. And of course, they're wrong. What they fail to understand is that Israel, the homeland of the Jewish people, the historic homeland of the people, restored them to their natural state. It put an end to the old stereotype of the Jew, do away with Israel, and the stereotypes will come back, and Yud will be made in Hollywood as surely as it was made in Germany. And I just think it's just this mistaken sense of who that you don't achieve freedom by denying who you are.
You don't, and it's worse than that.
And by the way, Lionel, good Americans support Israel.
Yes, of
course. Good Americans. I really believe that. Patriotic.
The statistics say they do, but I think it's even worse. I think that the Jewish self-hatred has infiltrated the Jewish DNA. I mean, after 2,000 years or more of being attacked, DNA is a malleable thing, we've learned.
We've learned that. It can change in your lifetime.
Yeah.
You know, I always wondered about something. At the time of the conversion of Constantine, I think 40% of the Roman Empire was Jewish, and there was roughly 42 million people. So there's about 18 million Jews. The number of Jews in the world really has not gone beyond that in the 1,700 years since. In other words, it's varied from a low of 12, 10 maybe after World War II, but never goes beyond 18 million, which means there's a constant atrophy. There's a constant number of Jews falling away, perhaps through intermarriage in the United States, but largely through mass murder and pogroms and Holocaust and so on, inquisitions. And you wonder, well, there's got to be some sort of natural selection going on when you ask, well, who survives? What kind of DNA? And that's what you're saying.
Yeah, there are different aspects to that.
Well, what kind survives? Is one of the things a certain, did they feel, is there a certain self-loathing that vouchsafes, or I don't know. It's very, very troubling because if I want to hear a full-throated explanation of why Israel deserves to exist, why it is a shining jewel amongst America's allies, why it is so...
You go to evangelical Christians.
I'll go to an evangelical Christian. I certainly can't go to Jews.
Go to a Jew. Now, here's the...
Except Dennis Prager.
Except for Dennis Prager, and maybe us. But anyway... Anyway, and the people at camera who went to protest at the CBS shareholders meeting were actually representing the best in Israel and the best in Jews. And they were the ones who were able to confront, and, you know, sadly, your old buddy Les Moonves kicked the can down the road in a mighty bad way.
I have a question. Just to have full disclosure, Les Moonves is a friend of mine, someone who I've admired, and I think has done a great job in many respects at CBS. I'm deeply troubled and pained. I wish he would come here and be with us and talk to us and just explain the hell is going on. But I have a question. Both camera and memory.
And honestreporting.com, by the way.
Yeah, now, but they're not entirely Jewish enterprises, I don't think, or are they?
Well, they're largely.
Largely.
Yeah.
Well, then that's a saving grace. It's a saving grace.
Yeah,
you know?
in fact, I would say almost completely.
But to Bob Simon and to the others, I say, in the ancient language, Yam Yisrael Chai. The people of Israel live.
All right, on that note, which I firmly agree with, let's turn to our good buddy, Matt Atchity at Rotten Tomatoes to see what movies are coming out this week.
Hi, this is Matt Atchity, Editor-in-Chief of Rotten Tomatoes, here to let you know what's fresh and rotten in theaters this weekend. First up, we've got That's My Boy, the Adam Sandler movie. This co-stars Andy Samberg. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of reviews for it yet, so I can't give you a score. But if you've known his last movies, if you've known what the critics have said about Adam Sandler, you know chances are they're not going to really like it. Now, I will tell you, I've seen the movie. I laughed, and if you're an Adam Sandler fan, you're probably going to enjoy this movie. The other big movie that's opening this week is Rock of Ages, which is the new film that's a musical based on the Broadway stage show that was very popular. It's kind of what's called a jukebox musical. It's got a lot of songs from the 80s, including songs from Def Leppard, Pat Benatar, Poison. It stars Tom Cruise, Alec Baldwin, Paul Giamatti, Catherine Zeta-Jones. It's about 40% on the tomato meter. Most of the critics say that it's really not very good. You were better off seeing the stage show, and this one is mostly something that you could probably avoid and be okay. Once again, I'm Matt Atchity, Editor-in-Chief of RottenTomatoes.com. For more reviews, make sure to check out the site.
Thanks, Matt. Well, that concludes this week's Pollywood. We'll see you again next week. This is Roger Simon.
And Lionel Chetwynd.